Lori here. I'm here to do my August TBR part 1. I'm separating this into 2 parts just because I tend to blabber on a lot and I don't want them to be too long. But I will admit, this month was not my best reading month. I did have a lot of time, but this month I found to be very, very stressful. For those that don't know, I say this in every single video, but I live in New York. I'm a teacher in New York City. And the New York City public school system right now has been very, very indecisive about what we're doing in September. So I really have been planning like a mad woman, but I've been planning with no real plan of attack from anyone. So it's kind of been a little bit stressful. Also, this was the month of like politics galore. So it's just been a little bit hard to focus on anything but that because it's just everywhere. And I want to remain well educated about what's going on in the world and be prepared for the election in November, but it's just a lot. I've been slowly taking this week and next week definitely to kind of like take a step back and kind of just like enjoy entertainment stuff again. I've been watching a couple of lighthearted shows and that's kind of what I've been doing, but I do want to kind of dive in and say what I've been reading. It hasn't been anything like I read in July and June, but I did read some stuff. I found some really, really fun reads, and yeah, let's get into it. So the first book I wound up reading was for a blog tour that I got from TBR and Beyond Reading Company, and that is Ignite the Sun by Hannah Howard. I'm thoroughly loving this book. I really wound up liking it. It basically follows this young girl, and she lives in a society where the sun is seen as evil and the devil and like something that you should be fearful of. And then the darkness is something that their leaders use, and it kind of like protects them. So you have this young girl, and she winds up being revealed to be the chosen one in the society, the sun, and she's wound up being revealed to be that person. I'm doing a very, very bad job of explaining this book, but it was so well done. I tend to like books that have like a long-term romance. I tend to like books that have like an underlying of something. Like this book definitely had a lot about elements of like anxiety and depression with the main character, but it also had a romance that started when they were young children. It was just a really, really great fast-paced read, and one that like I really had a hard time putting down. It was one that captured me from page 1, and I really wound up liking it. I wound up giving it 5 stars. If you go back in my blog, you'll see that I like fan casted it, and I chose 2 of my favorite actors in that one. But it was a really, really great read, and one that I think it tackled anxiety and depression in such like a creative way. That was definitely one of the highlights of that book for me. But I really hope that we get a sequel because I wound up really liking that, and I really like Hannah Howard's writing. I thought that she incorporated anxiety and depression into her fantasy world so well. And then the next book that I wound up reading was Crow Rider, which is the sequel to Storm Crow. And this I wound up giving a 4 stars. It's definitely a faster paced read, but it basically follows Princess Thea and her allies as they take back their kingdom. And you know what? I like this book. I think I still prefer book 1 a little bit more, but I liked it. I think that they did something very interesting with the romance in this book, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. I just love the dynamics between Thalia and her crow, and there was a lot of political maneuvering in this novel, but also a lot of adventuring, and it was great. I thought that it was like a solid ending to the story as well, and a solid duology. I really wound up liking this read, and I love the Storm Crow magic system a lot. I will say, if you do decide to read this book, just know that in the back there is a chapter called World of a Storm Crow. So if you do have any questions about the world, you can always go back and refer to that. Kalis is still one of my favorite characters in this read by far, and I wound up adoring this book. 4 stars for review. And then the next book that I wound up picking up was So This Is Love, and it's one of the Twisted Tale books. Slowly making my way through the Twisted Tales, and I think right now this is probably one of my favorite to date. It tackles the question, what if Cinderella never tried on the slipper? And it was just so good. I really wound up liking this book. I thought that it had a nice balance between the story that we know, taking a twist on it. It also really dived into Cinderella, but also the princess character, which I think is so important because I find sometimes in these Disney stories you don't really get anything about the prince. That's why I really liked Once Upon a Dream, which was the Sleeping Beauty one, and um, Part of Your World, which was the Little Mermaid one, because I felt like you really got to know the male leads in those books a lot more. This one was just so fun. I wound up really, really liking it. And it was great. Like, I felt like Cinderella is a story that I know very, very well, so I felt like it was easy for me to dive into that one very, very simply. I like that it definitely expanded the cast of characters. There was some things in that book, political intrigue wise, that I was like totally not expecting, but I also like that it was a different setting than what we've necessarily seen in the movie. So I like that her her job really affected that story, and like it kind of changed our perspective a lot of the world. I thought it was great. I really wound up liking it, wound up giving it 4.75 stars, and I definitely want to check out the other ones that I still haven't read, but definitely a favorite of that series so far. So very, very, very good. And then the next book that I'm going to chat through that I wound up reading is Finale by Stephanie Garber. Down to reading Finale. I actually wound up liking this. I still think I prefer Legendary overall, but I wound up liking the conclusion. I still think this is a fascinating, lush world. I think that I like this book because it did have both characters in it. I still think I like Tell a little bit more, but I really wound up liking it. I think I wound up giving it 4 stars. I struggle with the pacing occasionally throughout the read, but the lush world, the focus on sisterhood, both characters, the romance on both sides of this triangle were really, really fun, and I wound up really, really liking it. And the next book that I wound up reading was Wondersmith, which is The Calling of Morgan Crow, which is also the second book in the Nevermore series. Holopox is coming out late, like in the next couple of months. I did get the box from Owlcrate. I like this book. I think I still prefer book 1. This book definitely had more elements of a school. The mystery was also very, very embattled in it. But I think I liked book 1 a little bit more. This book definitely was very, very, very school focused. And I struggled a little bit with the pacing of this one. I'm excited to see what the next book will be because, again, she was in kind of a little bit of a challenging situation in this book because she was supposed to be in school, but everyone was very, very fearful of her. So she really was in kind of like a hard situation. But I wound up liking it. Definitely still engaged in the series. Really excited to read book 3. But I wound up giving this book 4 stars for review. I really did try this month to read quite a few sequels. So that was kind of one of my goals this month, and I think I succeeded, but I definitely didn't read as much contemporary books as I wanted to. And then the next book that I wound up reading was a thriller, and that is The Vanishing Deep by Astra Trollet. I actually picked this up. I remember I got this at New York City Comic Con in October, but I actually wound up picking this up kind of on a whim. I liked Four Dead Queens. I didn't love it, but this one I actually wound up liking. But it basically follows this girl named Tempe, and in this world, it's like a world of water. So there's water involved everywhere, and once you die, you can be put. Basically, you can be put somewhere, and you can be brought back to life for an hour. Or no, sorry, you could be brought back to life for 24 hours. So when Tempe's sister is killed, she makes it her goal to have her sister revived, to figure out some mysteries, some lingering mysteries that have kind of kept her confused about her and her parents' deaths. And then the other point of view you have is, oh no, I can't remember his name. Lore, who is a worker at the Palindrome town, like the building, and their paths wind up crossing. It was a very, very compelling read. I thought it dealt with a lot of topics like grief, adventure, I like the sister dynamics. I was very, very captivated by this read. I really liked the world. I thought it was very, very fleshed out. That was one of my criticisms I had about Four Dead Queens. I didn't like how the world was so splotchy because it was like 4 worlds all together. I love the focus on sisterhood and grief. I love the dual point of views. This was great. I wound up giving this 4 stars, and I'm really excited for her next read, League of Liars, because it's coming out next year. But definitely a solid read. If you were not the biggest fan of Four Dead Queens and you didn't wind up checking out The Vanishing Deep, I would recommend it because I wound up really, really liking this one. And you should always give an author a second chance. And then the next book that I wound up reading was a middle grade book, and that is Paulo, Santiago, and the River of Tears by Taylor K. Misha. I'm probably saying that wrong, but this is one of the Rick Riordan Presents novels, and this is focusing on Layla Ranel, the Wailing Ghost Woman. It is definitely more of an adventure story. It's a Mexican themed novel, Mexican Legend of the Crying Woman. I wound up liking this book. I wound up giving it 3 stars. I thought the diversity in this book was so solid. I really liked the characters in it. I like the adventure. I'm really excited to see what book 2 is. I think that there was one announced. But yeah, it was a very, very fun adventure story. I like the diversity. I like how they did talk a little bit about what's happening in America right down with immigration and stuff like that. Thought that was super important. There was also a lot of elements about the relationship between American police and Mexican culture in this, people that are Mexican. I thought that was really important. A great read, and I'm really, really happy that I read it, and I will definitely be checking out more by this author in the future. And then the last book I'm going to chat through in this video is A Touch of Gold by Annie Sullivan, which is a King Midas retelling. I wound up adoring this book, like a lot. I really like this book, but it basically follows this girl named Cora. Her father is King Midas, so when he touches her, she turns to gold, and then he kind of got her back, but she still kind of has some ailments from that. But this book was not what I expected at all. Thought I was going to head into like a political intrigue novel. Not what I got, but it was more of like a seafaring adventure story with a really, really fun romance, some unexpected twists in the romance department. It was a very, very fast-paced read. I really liked the world. I really, really liked the characters. There was a great twist on like the Midas myth, and wound up liking it. So this was another one that I gave 4.75 stars to, and I wound up really, really enjoying it. Also during this month, I started reading Creativity Inc., which is the behind-the-scenes book about the Pixar stuff, which is all about creativity and generating a positive creative workspace. And then I kind of put that book on hold when I got the book So You Want to Talk About Race, which is the one that I'm currently reading. But in my next reading vlog, you'll see the rest of the books that wrap up, you'll see the rest of the books that I wound up finishing in the month of August. I hope you guys are staying safe and being well, and I'll talk to you guys later for another video. Bye.